podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Salah. Escape Cancelo. Oh, it's brilliant from Mo Salah. And still, Salah. Oh, sensational! Son had a goal and scored a beauty.
Oh, what a strike from Yuri Tielemans.
De Bruyne. And it is Wood-Prowse.
Martinelli, gorgeous.
Still Gallagher. Oh, he's done it again. And City have won the Premier League.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, EPL Index proudly brings to you the best prediction podcast in the world, A Tad Predictable, with your host, Tadiwa Chanakira.
And we're back. Welcome to another episode of A Tad Predictable, the post-season edition of A Tad Predictable, where we are running through all of the EPL teams for the 24-25 season, seeing what they did last year, assessing what they need to do this year, and obviously everything in between, including the transfer window and what they need to do this summer in order to make sure that they achieve their goals next year. In the last episode, obviously, I spoke about the team I support, Liverpool Football Club. It's maybe a different approach to how many people thought that podcast would go, but as I've always said, I keep it honest. And when it comes to praise, I don't give any that isn't earned. When it comes to criticism, again, I don't give any that isn't earned. I'm fair in that way of things. But yeah, I spoke about how Trent, Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah should hold off contract talks with Liverpool until they have a proof of concept of what this Liverpool team is. And that can be in any iteration, whether it is, evidence in pre-season and the training that ticks it for you, or if it's I need to see certain signings or certain caliber of players come in through the door, or if it's no, I need to wait until we actually get into the season and see how both Schlott and the team manage throughout the season, and that will decide whether or not I want to stay at Liverpool. And those were obviously some interesting thoughts, but again, thoughts that are my own. I had Liverpool fan hat on yesterday as I approached that. But today we are going to be speaking about none other than the defending champions, Man City. The juggernaut, as I like to call them the freight train of the English Premier League. And I'm going to obviously go into some stuff with them, but it should be an interesting show. So we will see how we get on with that one. But yeah, I think the first thing to go off when you think Man City, and as I said, if you listen to the show during the season, I call them a freight train because once they get going, it's very hard to stop them. And it seems like they manage their season in a way that when it comes to the business end, their players are entering their peak, which is something that I've not seen done as well by other teams. And I guess they could probably argue that they don't have the strength of squad depth that City have, so they can't afford to sort of, game manage or load manage some of their players throughout the season, or they wouldn't even be in the conversation for some of these trophies or be in the conversation for within the title race. I get that. But City have been able to make sure that when it comes to their business end of the season, that's when the players are hitting peak form, and they've been very, very successful with that over the last 1, 2, 3, 4 years. City have won the Premier League. Can they go for the 5-peat this time around? And obviously in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 league seasons, City have won 6 of them. There's only one team in 1920, Liverpool, that were able to go on and win their 19th league title, that were able to stop this Man City juggernaut, this Man City freight train. But yeah, safe to say Man City have been dominant in this era, the most dominant era that any team has seen in English football, and that's just a fact of life at the moment. But I can't skip over the fact that from my perspective, everything City have done is with an asterisk. Every single thing that City have done since the new owners have come in has an asterisk next to it. And until, it's resolved on a legal basis, whether or not they get any ramifications for what is being alleged that they have done, and again, whether or not they're able to prove in a court of law or in an arbitration or whatever form they're going through in this iteration, until they're able to prove that and show that City breached, whatever rules that they want to be throwing at them, it's innocent until proven guilty. But I still have to throw an asterisk there. You still have to throw an asterisk over everything that they've done. And I'll put it in an analogy just now that maybe helps contextualize the way I see it with Manchester City. I do find it quite funny how Man City fans nowadays talk about, net spend. City aren't the problem in football. Look at the net spend of other teams. Yes, City can do that now because of the front loading that took place. I don't understand how that's not understood. If it was a fact that City did financial dope, if it was a fact that City did cheat and break the rules and breach the rules, then them cheating at the beginning and then starting to play by the rules now does not negate the fact that they've gained that advantage by cheating at the beginning. They've bloated things so much that now they can follow financial fair play rules and they can, be on the positive side of net spend. But you wouldn't have gotten to that point. You wouldn't have reached that point buying the caliber of players that you have bought during this process without having, if it is found to be, cheated or breached the rules or whatever the case may be. So I always find that weird. And with regards to the team itself, with regards to the players, the Kevin De Bruyne. Full disclosure, Kevin De Bruyne is my favourite player in the Premier League. As I said, yes, I'm a Liverpool fan, but Kevin De Bruyne is my favourite player. I absolutely enjoy watching him play football. He makes football look a lot easier than it is, and those are my favourite type of players. He reminds me, obviously not play for play, but he reminds me of Zidane in that ilk, of a player that makes the game look easier than it actually is. And I think it's sometimes unfortunate that the commentators don't do as good a job as they should do, in my opinion, in describing how difficult it is to do some of the things that he does do. Yes, they do go to an extent and do that, but I still think there's another level to reach in terms of really appreciating what that guy can do on a football pitch and how effortless he makes it look, because it's really not. It really, really isn't. If you speak to players regularly, if you were fortunate enough to play the game at a high level, you understand what I'm talking about. Or if you're just a fan of football, you understand what I'm talking about. It's incredible what that guy can do on a football pitch. So as I said, he's my favorite player. So like a Kevin De Bruyne, for example, if it ends up being that City financially doped or whatever, or they're found guilty of breaching the financial rules or anything in that ilk, what does that mean for the legacy of a Kevin De Bruyne? Because you can't take away the efforts that these Man City players, the Man City coaching staff, the Man City backroom staff, the physios, the trainers, the fitness coaches, the coaches themselves. You cannot take away the effort levels that they have gone through to achieve what they've achieved over the last couple of years. You cannot take away or deny the talent that they have shown on the pitch, the determination to go back to back to back to back, winning league titles, irrespective of how that team was formulated, as say, with an asterisk, because we still don't know, it's still inconclusive. Irrespective of that side of things, those players still had to go onto the pitch and deliver. And boy, have they done that. to devastating effect when you think about all the other teams in the Premier League. City have been that dominant. They've been that good, and no one could touch them. Liverpool have come close. They've done it once. Arsenal have tried. They've failed both times now that they've been in the title race. We'll see whether or not they can mount another challenge this coming season, and they're definitely trying to close the gap in terms of the transfer window, and we'll see how successful they can be from that perspective. But again, City is the benchmark. It's the standard. City are the ones that said, just to be in the conversation for a title race, you better be getting minimum 90 points. If you're not getting 90 points in a Premier League season, don't come talk to us, because you're not going to be near us. You're not going to be in the title race. That is the standard that City have set. Liverpool came second to Man City season after season in points tallies that would have won any other Premier League season. If Man City went there, if Liverpool went back through the years, pick any Premier League season that you want, those points tallies that they accumulated when they came second, Liverpool would have won the league. That's the standard that City have set. And it's an almighty task to try and overhaul them. And they like to keep it that way. And I'm sure they're going to try and keep it that way as long as they possibly can. So again, you can't take away the efforts of the players, the manager, the staff, all of that. Because they've put in those efforts. But I hinted at an analogy earlier on, and I was thinking about this and thinking about how best to put this in an analogy. And maybe I'll use two. Hopefully one of them hit home with you, and you can get where I'm contextualizing this conversation from, and then we can go from there. The first one I would do is the short-term approach of looking at it from 100-meter race, right? We're in Olympic season. Obviously, the 100-meter race, whether you want to do it swimming or running, but I'll use athletics for this one, running, right? Let's say that everyone in the Premier League starts at the start line. What City were doing by financially doping, if it is found out that is what they were doing, those are the allegations against them, is they were starting at the 30-meter line. Everyone else was starting, at the start of the race. The gun goes off. Everyone runs as fast as they can to get to the line. City go and win it, right? Now, City start at the 30-meter line, but when the gun goes, they run as hard as they can. They make sure their technique is flawless. They do everything they possibly can to go and win that race. But they started at the 30-meter line. It's not a fair race. You've pushed yourself ahead of everyone else in an unfair way. And the reason I say that is, again, if it is that they were found to be breaching the rules, they've done stuff that other teams are not allowed to do, which means they've advanced themselves further in, they've progressed themselves further ahead than what they would have been if they had followed the rules. And then now they're at the 30-meter line. They run the 70 meters and win the race. And they talk about, we didn't cheat. We didn't do anything wrong. We trained hard, we were disciplined, whatever the case may be. We beat everyone that was put in front of us and we won the race. Again, you can't take away the fact that they ran the race perfectly, but you have to question where you started the race from and whether or not that legitimizes your title race. You know what I mean? Another example is probably if you take like the long form analogy that I was thinking of, like a Tour de France, for example, where there are different checkpoints in a Tour de France. We know there's the sprint stages, we know there's the mountain stages in a Tour de France, and then obviously there's the overall yellow jerseys and stuff like that. In a stage in a Tour de France, there's certain checkpoints, and you get points for reaching that checkpoint. Let's say those checkpoints are league titles, right? You go and you win league titles throughout the course of an entire stage. What City have done, if it is found that they have breached the rules that they were meant to be playing by, is, yes, there were teams ahead of them, let's say in the yellow jersey race, like a Liverpool, like a Man United, who have over the course of however many years become the benchmark of Premier League football, of English football, in terms of financial power, in terms of influence in how the league is run and stuff like that. But certainly if we just use the financial side of things, from a commercial side of things, from a revenue side of things, City were not making financial gains or financial revenue anywhere near what a Man United were making. And Man United were the benchmark, and I'll use them as the benchmark because they were making the most money at the time, obviously, of this new version of Manchester City. So in order for them to catch up to where Man United are from a financial powerhouse, City haven't been cycling like everyone else has been cycling to try and catch up to Man United. If we take the yellow jersey approach of, okay, they're behind by a certain amount, a certain distance. They haven't cycled to catch up to Manchester United. What they've done, if it is found out that they have breached the rules, is they've driven in a car, caught up to Man United, got onto a bike and started cycling and said, hey, I don't see what's wrong with that. We're cycling like everyone else is cycling. Look where we are. We're amazing. And it's like, no, the fact that you had to drive the car whilst everyone else was cycling, overtake all those other teams that were cycling and doing things according to the rules. The fact that you're now on a bike doesn't negate the fact that you were driving in a car in order to get to in comparison to a Man United, for example. Those are the two analogies I'll use. Take it or leave it, but that's the context in which I say Man City. Anything that I talk about with Man City has to have an asterisk next to it because it's still inconclusive. We know they've been found guilty from UEFA standpoint. They've not challenged that in terms of they had to pay the fines and go through that process. So they've already been found to have cheated before. When it comes to a UEFA from a UEFA perspective, it's now obviously from a Premier League perspective whether or not they have been found out to have been cheating, and it also then goes to the extent of the punishment. What punishment would they get? What is the punishment going to be enough of a deterrent for someone else doing that, or is it going to be a way to put Man City back to where they were before they started all of the breaches? And maybe we'll go into a deeper podcast one day on my thoughts on that, but a short summary of that is, if you relegate Man City, because they breached these Premier League rules, all they're going to do is pull a Juventus where, okay, they spend one season in the Championship. Yes, they might lose some of their players, but if they then get promoted back to the Premier League and can continue spending in the way they've been spending, at this point in time now, is that really a deterrent? Okay, maybe it's embarrassing. Okay, maybe they take away some of the titles that they've won, or they take away all the titles that they won. But if I'm a Man City and I'm looking at it and I'm saying we were never going to win the title anyway, or at least it was going to need to be like a Leicester City type season because of how strong the bigger teams were at that stage in time when we did start employing these tactics. So we didn't stand as big a chance. Okay, now we've gone and won. They've said we cheated. Okay, they've taken those away. But we can come back and go and carry on winning because we still got the financial muscle and all of that stuff. If City are to be punished, if they are found out to have been financial doping or cheating or however you want to phrase it, they have to be put back in the position they were in before they started doing it, and they shouldn't be allowed to use those tactics going forward. They have to cycle from the beginning like everyone else and catch up and overtake and all of that stuff. But again, this is a Premier League that's obviously not all things equal, because there are teams that will say, well, it's heavily favored towards the bigger teams. How does a small team then climb up and get to that level without breaching the rules or without doing what a Man City did? Those are questions that need to be asked. But from a legal perspective, we all know there's such things as tax avoidance and tax evasion. One is okay, one's not so okay. Which one was it for City? We will find out whether or not the UK government steps in, from a political standpoint in the decision-making of what happens to City over these rulings. That will be something to watch. What is the involvement of the British government? But what I do want to say in closing, just to tie a bow on this and then we'll carry on going, is obviously as Nick Harris has tweeted time and time again, and I'll quote him here, where he's saying, without wanting to sound like a broken record, the issue with Man City isn't really whether they're going to be punished for breaking rules, but whether they're going to be punished for a third time. They've already been done twice, in 2014 and in 2020. So it's not like this is the first time they've been punished. They've already been punished. They had their FFP breaches before. Their 2014 punishments were so egregious and massive that several UEFA employees and contractors resigned or said they'll never work for UEFA again when they weren't handed a Champions League ban. This is public domain information. It's all out there. It's fact. Obviously some Man City fans don't like to refute that, or I'll rephrase it. I'll re-say that. Some Man City fans like to refute that, but this is in the public domain. It's there for you to go and find as a fact. It's what has happened. In 2020, they were fined 10 million euros for non-cooperation, and through no City experts will ever share this. Expert witnesses from both sides testify that there was insufficient disclosure to rule on disguised fundings. So Man City, in the public eye, always talk about, we're ready for the case to be tried. I know Pep Guardiola has spoken about this in press conferences. Yeah. Bring it on. Bring on the investigations. Bring on the trial. We want to, have our day in court. We're ready to go. But that's not the case when you look at it in the background, because if that was the case, that City were ready to go and were keen to get this thing over and done with, they surely would have been a lot more cooperative when it comes to disclosure and that kind of stuff. The fact they've dragged their feet says the opposite to what they're saying in the public. That's another thing that I think people need to be aware of. But as I said, the fact that decisions were made way above in my opinion, way above a Pep Guardiola's head, way above, obviously, a Kevin De Bruyne's head or a Erling Haaland's head or an Edison's head or a Vincent Kompany's head or whoever, David Silva, what a player, whoever you want to add there. Those people executed their jobs at an elite level. They've gone on to win championships after championships. They finally went and won the Champions League as well. They went and won trebles and everything that you could possibly win. They've done that. You can't take that away from them. What you can question, though, is how they were put into that position to be able to go win those championships. Would that team have been assembled? Would a Pep Guardiola be coaching Man City if they weren't in the financial position that they were in when he came in? Again, if they are found out to have breached rules. And again, as I said, they have been found out to have breached rules in previous years. So what are we really talking about? But I'll end that there, because I do think we can continue now with my thoughts on the Man City side, aside from all of that kind of stuff, aside from the asterisk side. But I have to put it in context. I can't not mention it because it's the reality of the situation. There is an asterisk there. But in terms of City going forward, in terms of City in this season, because it's unlikely that they're going to get a decision this season. So what do City do? It's business as usual, as we've seen season after season. Despite the cloud hanging over their head, they just continue collecting trophies, and it's going to be no different next season. That's the goal. That's the aim. Let's go and collect as many trophies as we can. We don't know how much longer Pep Guardiola is going to be here, so let's go and send him off in a better way than Liverpool sent Jurgen Klopp away. Let's send him off with another Premier League title, another Champions League if we can get it, or whatever other trophies that they may want to be collecting. But again, can they go and win it a fifth season in a row? I think from a Man City perspective, they're positioned in a really good position. Their biggest rival over the last couple of years, Jurgen Klopp, is no longer there. Obviously, Arne Slot comes in. It might take him time to implement his style of football and get the players playing at a title competing level. We never know. He could do it straight away and be in the title race, but and that would be commendable and an amazing feat. But if that doesn't happen, if what normally happens where it takes time for players to bed in and all of that stuff, if that happens, then you kind of say Liverpool maybe aren't going to be at that standard to challenge City all the way in the title race. And obviously, Liverpool haven't really made signings as well. I spoke about all of that in the previous episode with their need to bring in a defensive midfielder, etc., etc. So that takes them away. I think Man United are clearly rebuilding. They're trying to course correct years and years and years of just nonsense. And we'll get to the Man United podcast in obviously the next episode, where we'll dive a bit deeper into all of that. But they surely aren't title contenders next year based on the current situation that they're in. You look at other people that have been, title challenges in the past, like a Chelsea, for example. They again another new manager and more new players coming in. Team chemistry is going to be a huge issue for them. You surely couldn't put them in the title race. Tottenham, they've got continuity because their manager's going to be there for the second season. But again, do they have the squad depth to go an entire season? We saw what happened to them last season. A couple of injuries here and there for them, especially the wrong type of injuries, like a Van de Ven going down for them. It seems to collapse very, very quickly for them. So I don't think you can put them in a title race. Again, another team we'll talk about in a couple of weeks' time. So have I really left anyone else other than the team that is most likely to challenge them? Are they, I don't think we can throw Newcastle in there. We saw last season that it's clear that it's not going to be linear for them. It's not going to be, progression every season. It's going to be progression, couple of step backs, progression, and they'll try and climb the mountain that way. So the only other obvious team that's left there is Arsenal. And again, for Arsenal, it's similar to Man City in that they've got continuity with the manager. They've got a squad that has suffered defeat 2 seasons in a row now to Man City, and it could go either way. Either that motivates an Arsenal to say, okay, we've seen where we've fallen short. We're motivated to go one better. And you can certainly see the drive at Arsenal with the type of signings that they're making, and they're certainly not done in this window that they're going to try and go again. It's another season where they've got European football and will be able, it got to a point where some of those Arsenal players that were in the squad weren't used to playing Champions League and Premier League football week in, week out. So that takes getting used to as well. So now are they going to be more comfortable going into this season with that? And obviously, as I said, with the additions, are they closing the gap to a Man City? We'll see about that. But I think that has to be where it stops in terms of title contenders. It's Arsenal and City. And Arsenal are, of all the teams, the best positioned because they've got the continuity. We can see they're adding to the squad at this point in time. And obviously the window's not over yet, so we'll see what they do in the rest of the window. But we've seen Man City do this to Liverpool, where if you want to win the title from Man City, you have to go and beat Man City during the season, because if the season comes to, to those 1 points, 2 points, 3 points, 4 point type tallies, it's going to matter whether or not you beat Man City. It's going to matter. You can't play for the draw against Man City if you want to go win the league, because there's so few points to play for, because City accumulates so many points. And Klopp had to learn that the hard way. You could see the change in the style of play and approach that he took to those Man City games was different later in his career against Pep, and certainly in the season that they won the league title. Then at the beginning, he thought, I can play for the draw, or obviously I have to preface it by saying every manager wants to win every game. Okay, we get that. But the mature approach is you look at the fixtures and you try and identify which are the ones that we're really going to go for, which are the ones that we're okay, being a bit more conservative with, or would be okay with a conservative result. And obviously, as I said, you go for the win, whatever, okay? But you have to be strategic with these type of things. City have accumulated so many points over the seasons, year in, year out, that no, it's not enough to draw against them. You have to go and beat them. And until Arteta actually goes and plays Man City with a bit of balls, I don't know if Arsenal can go and win the league title. He has to go and beat Man City in league games. And he's not being able to do that, certainly not on a consistent level, certainly not at any level at this point in time. That's one thing that he has to tackle. So from a Man City perspective, I don't see how you don't pick them to go and win the title next season. I don't see how they're not the favourite to go and win their 5th Premier League title in a row. And what does that say for the league? I don't think, it's an indictment on the rest of the league, because as I said, look at the squad that City have, man. There are teams that we've seen in the past that have had more money than the other teams, or used more money than other teams, should I say, to assemble their squads. Let me put it that way. They've not assembled a squad like City have assembled a squad. They've not delivered on the pitch at a level that Man City have delivered. We've seen the Galacticos from Real Madrid, for example. Yes, there were the Galacticos, but were they as much of a machine as the City team is? I don't know. That's a debate for another day, but we'll go into sort of how do City continue to motivate themselves and this team and try and go win that 5th title. We'll go into their transfer business after this break. But I must say, this podcast is presented by EPLindex.com in association with our presenting sponsors, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider, and you guys can check out their services at libertyshield.com. You guys can save with the coupon code EPL25. That will give you 25% off of your router or your software VPN. We thank them for sponsoring this show. We are going to be right back after these short messages. All right, we are back. We're talking Man City. I obviously went through the whole asterisk side of things. We spoke about who could be potential challenges to Man City. As I mentioned, I only think Arsenal are potential title challengers at this present point in time, at time of recording. We all know that transfer windows can be crazy, so we'll see what signings teams make. Maybe that changes my mind closer to, the end of the transfer window, or once the transfer window has ended, we might revisit that. But at this point in time, it's Arsenal and City, and I think there's a gap there. I think it's Man City, a little bit of a gap, then Arsenal, then a gap, and then everyone else is trying to play catch up. However, whatever order you want to put in, whatever merits or mitigating factors you want to give for other teams. But that's where it starts and stops for me in terms of those teams. So let's then go and look at Man City from a Pep Guardiola perspective. How do you motivate this team that continues to win to keep winning? Is he worried it will get boring? Is he worried that these players won't be motivated? That's one thing about Pep Guardiola that, they have these discussions. Would Pep be able to manage a Liverpool, for example, or would Klopp be able to manage a Man City? And those types of, or even to the extent of, would Pep be able to manage, let's say, an Ipswich coming into the Premier League? Would McKenna be able to manage a Man City with all the big players and the big budgets and all of that stuff? One thing I will say about Pep Guardiola is, yes, everywhere he's gone, he has the most financially dominant team in that league. He doesn't go to teams that aren't the most financially dominant. And I think that's a knock on him from a manager perspective, from a legacy perspective. The fact that every team he's gone to has been the most financially dominant team in that league has to be a mitigating factor when it comes to the legacy conversation for Pep Guardiola, right? But the rebuttal to that is not every manager can manage big names. How many times have we seen managers lose the dressing room? How many times, Chelsea alone have just gone through a plethora of managers that have lost the dressing room because there are a bunch of big players in those dressing rooms and big personalities. It is impressive that Pep Guardiola, everywhere he goes, he's still able to manage these big names, these big egos, these big squads. Bearing in mind, these are big squads with big egos. So these are all players that are, like, for example, Man City's B team, right? If you were to split their senior squad into an A team and a B team, their B team is probably challenging for European football. Certainly top 10 in the Premier League, but probably pushing for European football in some iteration in the Premier League. So how do you manage those players? How do you keep those players motivated that aren't playing as often? Probably would start for the majority of Premier League teams and be star players in those teams, but you're still able to let them be on the have a squad role and still be happy enough to contribute at a high level, where when City rotate, you don't really see too much of a drop in terms of quality and performance. That in itself is impressive. As I said, we've seen time and time again managers that have lost dressing rooms. So I do think that is an impressive fact for Pep, and that is one of those things that doesn't get spoken about. I don't know if some of these managers would be able to handle all of those personalities and be able to handle such a big budget, such a big squad, such a big expectation of its league title or bust. Every season for City, it's league title or bust. If they don't win the league, it's a failure because of how dominant they are financially compared to every other team. That's the standard at Man City. That's what's been set. Obviously, the chase for the Champions League, trying to win a Champions League within, they finally get over that hump as well. It is impressive from that perspective, in my opinion. So I'm not worried about the players losing motivation, because Pep Guardiola has shown everywhere he's gone, irrespective of the facts that I've spoken about before with regards to, having, so many talented players and stuff like that. He always has them motivated. He always have them geared up to win. He always has them driving for more. It's not about one trophy. It's not about two trophies. They want 3. They want 4. They want every single trophy they compete for. They want to win every single game they compete in. That is not something I'm worried about with City. So next season, if anyone's thinking City are going to take the season lightly because they've won 4 in a row, you're in for a rude awakening. They're going for a 5th. That's what they're going for. They're going to drive it home and they're going to try and win it as best they can. Let's then talk about how do you then handle this transfer window. It seems like, from City's perspective, they're happy to be reactionary rather than being proactive in this window. They've got a settled squad. They've got the best squad in the league. That squad has just gone and won a league title. Evidently, there's a gap between their squad and the rest of the league. So it seems like City aren't too worried, and I don't think they should be, about, do we need to be so proactive in this league and this transfer window? No, because it's a catch me if you can type of situation. The onus is on everyone else to try and catch City. The onus is on the other teams to, whether it's catching them on the training ground or catching them with replacements or a combination of of both. You still have to try and catch them. So City are sitting sort of in that catbird seat with a reactionary approach of, look, we're happy with our squad as it is. If there's an opportunity to sign players, we will sign them. And obviously we'll discuss some of the players that have come in for Man City, obviously the likes of Savinho that has come in from Troyes and stuff. So a lot of players young players coming in from, the Man City group, sister clubs and all of that kind of stuff. Those things are always going to happen, and they're always going to have that, revolving door of players coming in and out within the City groups, because that's how that system has been built. But from a City perspective, if a Julian Alvarez is wanting to go play football because he knows he could probably start in majority of teams and probably do well as the lead striker, because he wants to play as a striker. It's evident he wants to play as a striker, and I think that's part of the problems for him when it comes to City is he's got Erling Haaland in front of him. No matter how well Alvarez plays, Erling Haaland is still the star man there. You know what I mean? There's not really anything he can do to push Haaland out of the way. So does he want to then go somewhere else, let's say to a Chelsea, for example, where he's probably got a better chance of fighting for the number one starting position? So unless they've got a situation like that when Alvarez wants to leave, or we've seen Bernardo Silva in recent seasons flirt with the exit door. We've obviously seen Kevin De Bruyne being linked with Saudi Arabia this season. We've seen Ederson being linked with Saudi Arabia, and obviously the speculation around him being upset with, you know, the praise that Ortega was getting with the saves that he was making, and obviously Ederson coming out and saying he's being misconstrued and misunderstood. I thought that was quite an interesting thing. But we've seen those rumors with Ederson potentially leaving. Those type of players, they can replace them as and when they need to. So as I was saying, if a Bernardo Silva leaves, all right, cool, we'll go get a Dani Olmo. If an Ederson leaves, okay, we'll probably promote Ortega and then go get like a London from Real Madrid or Marseille if they want to. He's been linked in recent weeks. Those are options that they can go get, you know, from Atletico. So it's going to be reactionary. If it is a situation where, okay, we're losing squad depth in a Calvin Phillips that went on loan, but we really want to sell him type of players, do they go and get a Bruno Guimaraes and just blow the thing out the water completely? Is a Kovacic maybe wanting to leave, you know, one and done with them type of situation, and he leaves and then you bring in a Bruno Guimaraes? But again, it's all reactionary. It seems like City are in a very comfortable position. If they need to, it's almost like they've got to break glass in case of emergency, break glass window. If they need to go make a transfer, they can go do it. They can go do it quickly because the funds are available, and that's not going to be an issue. But as things stand, the squad's good. It's the best in the league. No one has shown that they've caught up to us, really. Arsenal still need a forward, in my opinion. They obviously still need some depth in midfield, in my opinion. They've done well in bringing in some reinforcements from a defensive perspective. I still think Arsenal's goalkeeper is way below the standards of the title contending goalkeepers. You look at an Alisson Becker, obviously, whether or not Liverpool are title contenders this season, we'll see. But again, world-class goalkeeper. We see an Ederson, world-class goalkeeper. You look across other leagues, a Courtois, for example, world-class goalkeepers, and All Black, world-class goalkeepers. I don't see Raya or Ramsdale being world-class. There's certainly tiers to this. Maybe they might get there one day in their careers, but they're not there right now. So again, there's work to do for Arsenal there. So from a City perspective, it's perfectly fine to be reactionary, and I can see them. You know, if an Alvarez leaves, okay, they could probably go and get a forward. I mean, it would be fun if they go get, you know, just blow the water out and go get an Osimhen and pair him with Erling Haaland. But again, City have the financial power to go and do stuff like that. It's a very comfortable situation for City. I'm not worried about, if this player leaves for City, what are they going to do? You know, from a personal perspective, I'd be very sad if De Bruyne leaves because then I'm probably not going to watch as much of him as I would want to because, you know, especially if he goes to Saudi Arabia, for example, I'm just not going to watch as much of it because it's not the standard of football that I enjoy watching at this present point in time, at this iteration of their football league. So that would be a shame from my viewing enjoyment, not getting to see KDB week in, week out. But from a City perspective, they would be able to replace him, and they maybe, obviously he's getting on in the years, so maybe they can replace, and he's had injury, so maybe from an availability standpoint, maybe they can replace him like for like in terms of a player that comes in, maybe not quite hitting the heights of KDB, but at least is there week in and week out, unlike KDB where you have to load manage him and he's going to miss time during the season at certain points in time. But very, very comfortable situation if you're City. So I think I'll leave the podcast there in terms of I still think it's City's to lose. I don't think anyone at this present point in time, at time of recording, has done enough to catch up to City. I don't think City are being aggressive in the window because they're happy with their squad and they can be reactionary. If they need to go sign someone because one of their players is leaving, the money is there and available to go do that. So I don't think they're panicking at all. And if you're a City fan, don't panic. They got this. They know what they're doing. They've got this. And then obviously we'll sort of end the podcast the way I started the podcast, with reiterating that all of this has to be said with an asterisk. I'm sorry. That's just the nature of the beast. That's just the position that Man City have put us in. And as I've said, they've already been found to have breached things twice in a row. So this isn't, opinion. This is fact. Whether or not they get found out to have breached things from a Premier League perspective from these certain allegations that have come up, we will see. And we will see what the punishment is. Maybe the punishment is just, a fine that City will be happy to pay and move on with their lives, and then they can remove the asterisks. And then we can start talking about the legacy of Pep Guardiola and the players and Man City during this era. But I put a pause on all of that. Pep Guardiola's legacy does not involve Man City at this present point in time because the asterisk is still there. Until that's resolved, I'm going to leave it at that. And that is going to do it for another episode of A Tad Predictable. Guys, do go and check out EPLindex.com. Obviously, there are post-match and pre-match articles, reviews, previews, player performances, all of the news that you guys could wish for during this transfer window. Go and check out EPL Index on your podcast providers. Go check out EPL Index on the YouTube channel as well. Subscribe to that. That would be really good help for us. There are transfer daily podcasts that go out, giving you guys the knowledge of what is going on in the transfer world around the world. They're very short, very insightful, very interesting. And it just makes sure that you're keeping on track with everything, because you can imagine there's so many different things happening all over the place. Just pop one of those videos on, go like the videos as well. If you're watching them, go subscribe. If you subscribe, it's perfect, because get the bell on, get the notification. All right, you'll get your daily dose of transfer news. You'll keep up to date with what's happening in world football, and you carry on with your day. It's quite beautiful. Let me know your thoughts on Man City. Do you think that their legacy can be discussed? Do you agree with me that there's an asterisk there and it can't be discussed until the asterisk is removed? Or do you think I'm just being a sour Liverpool fan? Maybe it is that I'm being a sour Liverpool fan, but if you listen to the Liverpool podcast yesterday, I think you'll definitely hear that I don't have Liverpool rose-tinted glasses. I'm an objective podcaster. Yes, sometimes I put on my Liverpool hat when I do don this microphone, but for the most part, I'm objective. For the most part, I'm honest, and I keep it real. As I said, nothing is given that isn't earned on this podcast in terms of praise or criticism. But yeah, that is going to do it for this episode. I've been Tadiwa Chanakira. You can find me on Twitter at the handle at Tad Predicts. This podcast Twitter handle is at A Tad Predictable. Go follow at EPL Index on Twitter as well. Huge thank you to John Empire SA. It's Obi Semenya, as I said, at John Empire SA on Twitter. Huge thank you to Jody as well. Those two do our podcast intros. She's at Spursy141 on Twitter. Our producer behind the glass, Mr. Guy Drinkle, and his team, he's at Guy Drinkle on Twitter. They put in a whole lot of effort to make sure that the wheels keep going on this podcast. And remember, Chisinga Perry, Gino Shura.
And still, Salah, sensational! Son had a go and scored a beauty!
Oh, what a strike from Yuri Tielemans!
De Bruyne! And it is Ward-Prowse!
Martinelli, gorgeous!
Still Gallagher! Oh, he's done it again! And City have won the Premier League!
Sports Social Podcast Network.